You ever feel that? That powerful, almost uncontrollable energy rising up inside you? It's like an internal fire, and it can feel like nobody in the world understands it. Maybe you don't even understand it yourself. Well, today we're diving into a dark, timeless little story about that very force. It's a tale about a traveler, a mysterious burden, and a choice that, well, a choice that defines everything.
And this right here, this single sentence is the absolute heart of it all. It's a piece of wisdom whispered by a wandering spirit in our story, and it really sets the stage for a question every single one of us has to face. What do we do with that fire that burns inside?
So our story kicks off with a character who basically is this internal struggle brought to life. He's a weary traveler, totally alone and judged by everyone around him, carrying this weight that is so much more than just physical.
So, picture this. There's a guy struggling under the weight of this old, rusted barrel. And when he stumbles, his reaction is just pure fury, a scream that just shatters the peace. Now, to the villagers watching, the conclusion is pretty simple, right? This guy is impulsive, he has no self-control, he's a danger. They judge the outburst and they see it as nothing more than a flaw in his character, a moral failure. But they're only seeing the surface.
And this is where our whole perspective just flips. A wandering spirit sees the exact same event, but it looks deeper. It doesn't see a wicked man, no. It sees a natural phenomenon, something as elemental as the earth itself. It sees the explosive, pressurized force of magma building up inside a volcano. That outburst isn't malice. It's a biological necessity.
So, what is this internal magma? What's really going on here? Through the eyes of the spirit, we can start to break down what's happening inside this traveler and, inside all of us. And it really just boils down to a conflict between two very powerful, very distinct forces. First, you've got the biological pressure. Now, the story frames this not as some personal failing, but as an ancient inheritance, a force of nature. Just think of it like this raw, fundamental power that builds up inside our spirit. The source material even calls it a biological necessity. It has to be expressed, or the soul itself just stagnates. So the pressure itself, that's not the problem.
The second force is what the spirit calls emotional vanity. And this is the story we tell ourselves after the pressure erupts. It's that complicated mental play we perform to convince ourselves our outburst was for some noble cause or some righteous reason. It's a mask, really, a mask of dignity we put on to hide the simple, raw animal force that was actually driving the whole thing.
Okay, so let's put these two side by side, because this is where it all clicks. On one side, you have the raw energy, the biological pressure. It's a force of nature, and the fact that it exists is completely outside of your control. Then, on the other side, you have the emotional vanity. That's the justifying story you create. That is a mental performance, a choice that we make to explain away our reaction. The really crucial thing here is learning how to separate the two, the uncontrollable reality from our chosen response to it.
And once you can see that distinction, it opens up two very, very different paths. The spirit reveals to the traveler that he has a choice. Not a choice in whether the pressure comes, but a choice in what he does with it when it finally arrives.
Now, the first path is kind of the default setting for most of us. It's the path of the slave, where you just stay a victim of that biological pressure. You react blindly, you let the energy erupt without any direction. This is the path of the wrecking ball, a destructive, chaotic flame that just burns whatever and whoever happens to be nearby.
But the alternative is the path of the free spirit. On this path, you don't fight the energy, you claim it. You treat it not as an enemy you have to defeat, but as a craft you have to master. By consciously directing this power, you transform yourself from a victim into an architect. And that very same fire that could have been a wrecking ball, now it becomes a creative flame. It becomes a forge for building something entirely new.
This quote from the spirit just says it all, doesn't it? The traveler was stuck justifying his reactions, that is, his emotional vanity at work. The spirit's advice is to shift his entire mindset from justification to craftsmanship. Stop making excuses for the fire and start learning how to wield it.
And that brings us to the ultimate lesson of this whole allegory. It's about becoming the architect of your own internal world, and it's a concept that echoes deep into some really ancient philosophy.
This all leads to a timeless lesson, one that's right at the very heart of Stoicism. See, you cannot control the external events, or in this case, those internal biological pressures that bubble up. They're inevitable, like the sun rising. But you have absolute control over one thing: your judgment, your response, the story you build around that pressure. And that, right there, is where your true power lies.
And so we end right back where we started. That fire, that immense internal pressure, it's a fact of life. It's coming for all of us, no exceptions. The only question that's left is the one the Spirit leaves for the traveler. And now, for you. Will you let it be a wrecking ball, or will you become the architect of a forge? What will you build?